Are video games racist? Yes, I know I am far from the most qualified person to discuss this, but for those who are unaware, Kingdom Come Deliverance, a Kickstarter medieval RPG developed by Czech game developer Warhorse Studios, has come under some flack from media outlets and potential customers for its director David Vavra's controversial pro-Gamergate stance and on-purpose exclusion of African NPCs in the game. He is absolutely adamant that this exclusion is in the name of complete historical accuracy and that there is no way that there could possibly be any black people in 1403 Bohemia. He claims that within the area in which the game takes place, 9 square kilometers, that there is absolutely no way in which any black people could have been present. Quote, "There were no black people in medieval Bohemia, period," and that we are consulting everything with top historians on the period, and they laughed when I told them about this nonsense. He mentions running everything through, I assume, Czech historians in order to make sure that their game hits the level of realism that they wanted to capture. There's a site that has been tangled up in the various Reddit threads and forum posts related to this whole debacle. It's a Tumblr blog entitled Medieval People of Color. I certainly never thought I would be quoting anything tangentially related to Tumblr, but it contains an archive of cited artworks and accounts depicting people of color from the early 10s to the 1700s that emphasize the notion that people of color were very much prominent in Europe prior to when they are largely accepted to have been. When we look at the gallery for the 1400s, we see works from Italy, Germany, and England predominantly, but in his defense, no Czech Republic. I want to try to get to the bottom of this the best I can, but there is an unfortunate lack of racial census from the period due to the obvious social and political strife. However, it is widely accepted at this point that there was in fact a sizable black footprint in Europe at large. When it gets unclear is when you try to dig into whether or not Bohemia specifically harbored anyone of this ancestry. His generalization makes it appear as if we know 100% that this is how it was, and this apparently isn't the case. Having such a wide opening in our knowledge base means the team had to make a decision. Either go with what little knowledge that we do have that points to an entirely white country at that time, or use a slight bit of deductive reasoning and assume that just because the nation was beyond a reasonable doubt predominantly white, there had to be at least some people of color in the area at large. We know that black people not only lived throughout Europe, but were socially accepted. Their presence was undoubtedly small, but it was there. Putting 1 or 2 black individuals within the game's map would be far from a historical stretch and certainly wouldn't crush the title's much touted realism. This compromise is even less detrimental when you actually look at the game itself. The complete realism is bullshit. It is a video game, and for better, steps were taken to make the game more fun than a total period accurate medieval blacksmith's illiterate son simulator would be. That game would be absolutely miserable. When you introduce magical healing potions, you should allow the door to open for other positive inaccuracies that would help the game overall. This inclusion would be far from being as blatantly antithetical as Call of Duty World War II's ability to play as a black woman in the German army. It isn't that far-fetched at all to assume that there had to be some African people in the area, even if they were not documented in the very scant recordings we do have from the period. Now, for the record, I'm glad that these unrealistic features are there. I am not one for total realism whatsoever, and I believe that most of the time it is detrimental to the enjoyment of a game. I honestly wish the game strayed even further from reality for the sake of playability. No piece of fiction based off of history is entirely accurate, and that's okay. Even with all of this, do I think that David is a racist, sexist, bigot pig and you should boycott his game? Not necessarily. I believe he probably took the word of these various historians to heart and planned the process with those accounts in mind. He felt that for his art to be the most authentic, it would need to follow the word of those who understand the period and area the most. At the very least, he didn't pull the recent David Cage "I have a black friend" card, even though he kind of did that when fending off the allegations of sexism. What I actually find abhorrent is his very public support and revisioning of Gamergate. I'm going to assume that most everyone watching this understands what the shitstorm of Gamergate was. It wasn't a fight for ethics or an effort to show the SJWs the what for. It was a disgusting maelstrom of harassment and despicable behavior from supposedly grown adults. You don't see this stuff happening, gloss it aside, and willingly associate yourself with it, and then twist the meaning to align with your own views. In an interview with TechRaptor.net, he goes into detail about how, quote, "I believe that some people may start thinking that I support people who hate women, even though I absolutely do not. I may lose some friends, but I think that fighting for freedom of speech and artistic freedom is very important. And I think that some of journalists just crossed the line, and somebody should say that. So if this is the case, David, stop openly supporting Gamergate, because that is exactly what they are associated with. I will leave the link to this article in the description because I recommend everyone read it for the extended context, but honestly, I agree with a few things that he says here. The state of games media as a completely left-dominated echo chamber that punishes any external ideas is not positive and does not represent everyone who plays games, but do not tie yourself so closely to this movement. It is not positive, it is not the change we need, but maybe we can discuss that specifically in the future. And I highly recommend probably not wearing that white, privileged, able-bodied, cisgender, basement-dwelling, man-baby, virgin, scum, phallocratic, MRA, neckbeard, shitlord shirt. It's not a good look. So to cap this off, I just want to emphasize that despite all the drama, this game is good. It's a little rough around the edges for sure, but I do recommend you play it at some point, especially after the fucking atrocious lockpicking is fixed. A game's identity is not completely overshadowed by one person. I don't believe this to be the case with Detroit and David Cage / Quantic Dream or Warhorse and Vavra. I, however, do completely understand if the aforementioned information is enough to put a bad taste in your mouth, and really that's all this comes down to. There is so much choice in games available that it is okay if you don't agree. The beauty of having such a diverse selection of games and access to social media is that each individual can make the choice of separating art from artists for themselves. I personally will be getting back to exploring medieval Bohemia, and I hope you enjoyed this little look into a game and its developer. This is a new format for Gridlife Digest, so leave a comment telling me what you thought. Give me a like if you enjoyed it, or a dislike if you didn't. I'm always open to honest feedback, and I realize I just made an entire video saying don't make blanket statements unless you have irrefutable evidence to back it up, and don't associate yourself with people who harass others. It's very simple when you put it that way. We put up new videos every Monday and Friday, and every Wednesday at 9 a.m. we drop Gridlife Digest Weekly, our culture and gaming podcast. Check those out. We'll see you next time. Bye.